Sego, welcome friends. Today we begin reading Mad Bear, Spirit, Healing, and the Sacred in the Life of a Native American Medicine Man by Doug Boyd. Author's note. I'm grateful to all my friends and colleagues and to all the traditional tribal people who were part of the events told here and who are part of the ongoing story. My thanks to our founding cross-cultural team, Dudley Bush, John Cates, and Bill Hay, to Tim and Pamela Ballingham, who were an invaluable support to me personally as well as to our work with traditional peoples, and to all my friends from the International Center for Integrative Studies, Ann Haberton, Helen Robinette, and Ursula Thunberg, to name a few, for their unending help, friendship, and encouragement. My thanks also to the staff of the Cross Cultural Institute of New York for providing me the time and encouragement to complete this book. For Mad Bear, with whom I worked and traveled on a nearly daily basis for many years, and who continues to be a source of inspiration and instruction, I hope I can offer more than gratitude. Prologue. The story of Falseface was among the first of many tales and legends I had heard from Mad Bear. The false face that hung on the dark, paneled wall of his den was the first one I ever saw. It looked like a mask to me, an impossibly distorted and grotesque face whose nose, cheeks, and chin and protruding lips had been pushed horribly off-center. I learned it was a living deity. His hair grew. He was a wooden carving, a hollow face hung high on a peg near the ceiling. The coarse, dried hair that draped down past the chin on either side of the face appeared to be glued to the top of the head. But it grew. Over the years of our acquaintance, I often stayed at Mad Bear's Tuscarora cabin, and whenever there was a sufficient gap of time between my visits, I was sure that those dry, yellow thatches hung perceptibly closer to the floor. It was never mentioned by Mad Bear nor by me. Over time, I came to feel grateful that I had never inquired or remarked about that sacred object, or, worse yet, pointed at it, or even waved a hand in its direction, for I knew what it was. Whenever an occasional visitor performed such an infraction, I could see Mad Bear's discomfort. On my first visit to Mad Bear's place, as we ate and drank coffee and started plans for our upcoming adventures, as I listened to his cheerful voice and easy laughter, I believe my eyes remained long fixed upon that false face. I watched it hanging there, still and breathless and looking very much alive. Mad Bear noticed. He stopped talking and watched me for a moment. Then he turned in his chair to the faced being on the wall and spoke something in his own language. "This is Falseface," he said to me, still facing the wall. "He is in my keeping. I feed him and watch over him. He goes with me to ceremonies, and I take him to the traditional rites that are for him and his people. I belong to the Falseface Society. To me, this is a big responsibility and a big, big honor." He paused and turned to look at me. I had no questions. They weren't necessary. He would tell me what he wished and nothing more. I will tell you his story, who he is and how he came to look like that. But he is gone now, evolved beyond this. These beings have graduated and gone to a higher world. They are high, high, high beyond us. Yet we keep the false face in this form, and we pay honor and respect to it. It reminds us of a lesson far ahead of us, a hard lesson we have yet to learn. I call him Falseface even though that wasn't his name at his time. That was never the name of his people or him, but that is how we refer to it. Falseface had studied and learned all the basic things in the universe. Then he had prepared and developed himself in all the medicine ways. It took centuries of hard work, but eventually he developed all the spiritual powers known on this earth. He knew all the ways of the Creator. One day, Falseface stood out in a large field looking at the skies and at the mountains in the distance, and he thought to himself, knowing as I do all the ways of the Creator, all the things in this world are possible for me. I now understand how all things are done. Why, if it should be my will, those mountains should have to move. And then he heard the voice of the Creator, whom he knew as the great Lord of the universe. The voice said, "Yes, I am the Lord, and the mountains are there by my will." Falseface paused for a moment. Many times he had heard the voice of the Creator, but now he was thinking only of himself. Speaking aloud, he announced in a powerful voice, "I have come to know the ways of the Lord, and I can duplicate them all. I can move these mountains if I wish." And the Creator repeated, "Yes, I am the Lord, and I can move the mountains." "Not you," shouted Falseface. "I am referring to myself. I am talking about me. Have I developed all this for nothing? Can I do nothing myself? I have learned all the rules of power and creation. Do you still think I am useless without you?" "You are never without me," the Great Spirit answered in a gentle voice, "for I am always with you." "But I know all your secrets now," Falseface protested. "I know how you do all these things." "It is because you have come to me," said the Great Spirit. In spite of all that he had learned, in spite of all of his training and wisdom, Falseface experienced a rush of great pride and anger, and he shouted at the Creator, "Go away! Leave me alone! I don't need you anymore! I am now powerful, and you want to think of me as your little child. I am not your little child anymore. I can do anything that you can do. Just leave me alone." "Alone," said the Great Spirit. "There is no alone. How can I leave you? We are one and cannot be apart." It seemed to him, in his anger, that the Lord was discrediting him, in spite of all his long efforts and remarkable knowledge and power that he had attained. "I do not pit anything against anything," answered the Lord. "This idea of a contest is a temporary dream. Wake up and come to me now, and you will see that nothing is anything in its own right, apart from all that is." But Falseface repeated his challenge. "You are trying to take everything away from me, Lord. You cannot take this chance away. Do what you like. Oppose me if you like, but I'm going to move these mountains anyway. Knowing that you want them where they are, so that it will be clear that it is done by my will alone." Falseface waited there in the field, grim and determined, and there was nothing but silence. So he went about the contest. Though he strained with all his might, trying everything that he had learned and developed over the centuries, nothing happened. Nothing at all. There was only a soft breeze, and the mountains stood in the distance as always. He flew into a rage, cursing in a way that cannot be repeated, and, when there was only silence, daring the Lord to respond. He called the Great Spirit a fake and a liar, claiming the Creator had pitted his great will against him in spite of promising he would not. Then an idea occurred to him. He would have his contest yet. He shouted at the Lord, daring the Lord to move the mountain while he tried to block him with his own will as the Lord had done to him. He believed that if the Lord had neutralized his power, then he could do the same to him. But he also believed that the Lord might well want the mountains where they were, and he would be unwilling to move them. In either case, nothing would happen. He craved to claim victory over the Lord, and he felt sure he would win his dare. He shouted his challenge again. He clenched his fists and squinted his eyes and screamed into the sky, and before he could finish the sentence, he heard a trembling and a rumbling. He spun around to look just as the mountain was coming to his side. That was a mistake, for that caused the mountain to strike his face and break his nose. And at the gentle voice of the Great Spirit was heard again. Now look what we have done to our beloved self. No matter. It is very temporary. We shall set it right with our collective will, shall we? Falseface felt a moment of great pain, and then he had a sudden awareness. There was no contest. There had never been any contest. This was another of his countless lessons, but this was the ultimate lesson, and he had arranged it. He and his own self, so that he could be free from the desire to be a separate, independent something in its own right, so that he could be free of being part and alone. Mad Bear leaned back in his chair and picked up his coffee. But this is not one person, he went on. This is a whole people. And this kind of look represents their humility and their awareness of their incompleteness. He turned away from me again, and now both of us stared at the face of the wall. Just think of what we have to look forward to. After all our learning and development, we are still going to come to that last great contest, that last big hurdle for the powerful ego. Isn't that something? But once you have made that last hurdle, that's it. Then you graduate and go on to a higher level. I looked at the back of Mad Bear's head. I tried to imagine him at this last big hurdle. I tried to picture him standing in such a field, engaging in such a contest, and coming out looking like Falseface. He turned around and grinned at me as though he sensed my thoughts. "Looks like we're out of coffee," he said, holding his cup upside down. "This darn pot's too small. What do you say we crank her up again and then get down to business? We got a lot to talk about." Niawa.